Chosen one, what if the greatest misunderstanding in your soulmate's life wasn't that they lost you, but that they truly believed you had stopped caring? For a long time, they convinced themselves that you had already closed the door on the connection. They imagined you had found peace without them, accepted the distance, and continued building a life where they no longer existed. It wasn't easy for them to believe that story, but repeating it every day felt less painful than holding on to hope. So they buried their questions, silenced their emotions, and slowly taught themselves to stop looking back. Then, without warning, everything changed in a single unexpected moment. It wasn't a dramatic reunion or a message they had been waiting for. It was something much quieter, something they never intended to discover. A small detail, an unexpected conversation, or a forgotten reminder suddenly revealed a truth they had never considered before. In that instant, every assumption they had been carrying began falling apart. They realized they had spent all this time believing you had moved on, when in reality they had never truly understood what was happening inside your heart. The discovery wasn't loud, but its impact was impossible to ignore. It forced them to question every conclusion they had accepted since the separation. The universe has a mysterious way of allowing people to believe incomplete stories until the exact moment they are ready to handle the full truth. Looking back, your soulmate began noticing that the signs had always been there. Certain moments never made sense. Certain memories refused to fade, and certain emotions continued returning no matter how much time passed. They simply never connected those pieces together. But now, with this unexpected discovery standing before them, everything felt different. The story they believed for so long could no longer survive. And as they started searching for the truth hidden beneath the silence, they realized this was only the beginning of a revelation that would change everything they thought they knew about your connection. The discovery refused to leave your soulmate's mind. They tried to dismiss it as a coincidence, telling themselves they were simply reading too much into something small. But every time they attempted to move on with their day, their thoughts quietly returned to that unexpected moment. There was something about it that felt different, something that wouldn't allow their heart to settle. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped asking themselves how they could forget you and started asking whether they had misunderstood you all along. That single question changed everything. It shifted their attention away from the ending they had accepted and toward a possibility they had never truly explored. What if the story they had repeated inside their mind for so long was never the complete truth? As that possibility grew stronger, they found themselves revisiting moments they hadn't thought about in years. But this time, they weren't remembering them through the eyes of someone carrying disappointment. They were seeing them through the eyes of someone searching for understanding. They remembered conversations that once felt ordinary, but now seemed filled with hidden meaning. They recalled moments when you almost said something important before changing the subject. They remembered how your eyes sometimes carried emotions your words never expressed. Back then, they assumed silence meant acceptance. Now they wondered if silence had actually been hiding feelings that neither of you knew how to put into words. The more they reflected, the clearer it became that people often mistake quietness for closure, when in reality, some of the deepest emotions exist where the fewest words are spoken. One memory, in particular, continued returning to them. It wasn't a goodbye or an emotional conversation. It was a simple interaction that seemed completely insignificant at the time. You smiled, paused for a brief second, and looked as though you wanted to say something, but instead, you let the moment pass. Your soulmate had forgotten about that tiny detail for years. Now it refused to leave their thoughts. They began wondering how many moments like that they had overlooked because they were too focused on what they expected to see instead of what was actually happening. They realized that the heart often notices the truth long before the mind is willing to accept it. Looking back, they could now see countless small moments that quietly contradicted the story they had been telling themselves ever since the separation. This realization humbled them in ways they never expected. They had spent so much time believing they understood your decision, your feelings, and your journey that they never questioned whether their own conclusions had been incomplete. It became painfully clear that assumptions have a strange way of becoming memories if they are repeated long enough. Without realizing it, they had built an entire version of reality based on fears instead of facts. Every unanswered message became proof that you had moved on. Every period of silence became evidence that you no longer cared. Every passing month convinced them that your heart had forgotten what theirs never truly could. Yet now, after this unexpected discovery, those conclusions no longer felt as certain as they once had. They began recognizing how easily fear can fill the empty spaces left behind when honest communication disappears. As they continued reflecting, another truth slowly emerged. They realized that moving on does not always mean forgetting. Sometimes people appear calm on the outside while carrying an entire ocean of emotions beneath the surface. Sometimes they choose silence not because they no longer care, but because they believe speaking would only create more pain. Your soulmate suddenly understood that they had mistaken your strength for indifference. They believed your quietness meant your heart had already found peace, when perhaps it simply meant you had learned to carry your emotions privately. That possibility touched them more deeply than they could explain because it completely transformed the way they viewed everything that happened after your paths separated. The universe often hides its greatest lessons inside the smallest moments, and your soulmate could now see that truth unfolding before them. They no longer believed that the unexpected discovery was random. It had arrived at the exact moment they were finally ready to question everything they thought they knew. Looking back, they understood that if this truth had been revealed earlier, they might have ignored it or misunderstood it. But now, after everything life had taught them, they possessed the emotional maturity to see beyond appearances. They realized that real connections cannot always be measured by visible actions. Sometimes they continue existing quietly, shaping two lives even when neither person fully understands how or why. As this new understanding settled into their heart, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by regret, they felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The burden of believing you had completely moved on, slowly, began lifting from their shoulders. In its place came curiosity, compassion, and hope. They no longer saw the separation as a final answer. They began seeing it as a chapter they had misunderstood from the very beginning. And just when they thought this unexpected discovery had revealed everything it came to reveal, life quietly began placing even more clues before them. One by one, strange coincidences, familiar memories, and perfectly timed reminders started appearing, as though the universe was gently whispering that this revelation was not the end of the story. It was only the first piece of a much greater truth waiting to unfold. Once your soulmate accepted that they might have misunderstood your silence, the universe seemed to respond in ways they could no longer explain. It wasn't as though life suddenly became filled with extraordinary miracles. Instead, ordinary moments began carrying extraordinary meaning. They would be walking through an ordinary day when a familiar song unexpectedly filled the room, and every word seemed to reflect emotions they had been unable to express. A stranger would mention something that sounded almost identical to a conversation you once shared together. Even places they hadn't visited in years suddenly awakened memories they believed had disappeared forever. None of these moments demanded attention on their own, but together they formed a pattern too precise to dismiss. It felt as though life itself had quietly begun pointing in one direction, and every path somehow led back to you. Rather than resisting these reminders, your soulmate began observing them with an open heart. They noticed that each coincidence carried more than nostalgia. Every unexpected reminder revealed something new they had overlooked before. A memory that once caused sadness now revealed hidden kindness. A goodbye they once viewed as final now appeared filled with hesitation instead of certainty. They realized that time had changed more than their circumstances. It had changed their perspective. Looking at the past with greater emotional maturity allowed them to recognize truths that fear had once hidden. They finally understood that when people are hurting, they rarely see events as they truly are. They see them through the lens of their own pain. Now that much of that pain had softened, the past was beginning to reveal an entirely different story. One evening, while quietly reflecting on everything that had happened since the unexpected discovery, your soulmate asked themselves a question that completely shifted their thinking. If you had truly moved on, why did every meaningful reminder continue leading back to you? Why did your memory still carry peace instead of bitterness? Why did your presence continue appearing during moments when they needed guidance the most? Those questions stayed with them because they couldn't find a logical explanation. The more they searched, the more they realized that some connections leave an imprint far deeper than ordinary relationships. They are not remembered because someone refuses to let go. They are remembered because they become part of the person someone grows into. Your influence had quietly shaped their choices, their values, and even the way they understood love. Long after the two of you had gone separate ways, as this awareness continued growing, they stopped searching for dramatic proof. They no longer needed impossible signs or grand declarations from the universe. Instead, they began trusting the quiet consistency of everything they were experiencing. Every reminder arrived naturally. Every memory appeared at exactly the right moment. Every unexpected coincidence gently confirmed what their heart was already beginning to accept. They understood that the universe rarely forces people toward the truth. It patiently repeats the same message until the heart becomes willing to listen without fear. Looking back, they realized these gentle confirmations had likely been appearing for much longer than they recognized. They simply weren't ready to understand them until now. Then came the realization that changed everything. Your soulmate understood that the unexpected discovery had never been the destination. It was only the first key that unlocked a much greater understanding. The universe wasn't trying to convince them to relive the past. It was helping them see that the connection had never disappeared beneath time, distance, or silence. What disappeared was their ability to recognize it while they were trapped inside assumptions. Now those assumptions had fallen away, revealing something remarkably simple, yet profoundly powerful. They had never truly lost the connection. They had only lost sight of it. And once they recognized that truth, they knew the next chapter of this journey would no longer be guided by fear or misunderstanding, but by a clarity neither of you had ever possessed before. As your soulmate continued reflecting on everything the universe had quietly revealed, one realization rose above all the others. They finally understood that the connection between you was never lost because of a single mistake or one unfortunate moment. It slowly disappeared beneath layers of misunderstanding that neither of you knew existed. Looking back, they could now see how easy it is for two people to care deeply for one another while quietly believing completely different stories. They assumed your silence meant closure. You may have believed their distance meant certainty. Neither heart truly understood what the other was carrying. Instead of asking difficult questions, both of you protected yourselves with assumptions. Those assumptions slowly became walls, and with enough time, those walls looked stronger than the love that had always existed behind them. This realization didn't fill your soulmate with regret as much as it filled them with compassion. They stopped judging the past through the eyes of the person they used to be. Instead, they looked at every memory with the wisdom life had given them since then. They remembered moments when both of you stood on the edge of honest conversation, but allowed fear to speak first. They remembered opportunities to explain feelings that quietly disappeared because neither of you wanted to risk making things worse. At the time, remaining silent felt safer than becoming vulnerable. Now they understood that silence often creates the very distance people are trying to avoid. The heart cannot understand what is never spoken, and love cannot respond to emotions that remain hidden forever. As this truth settled within them, another unexpected understanding quietly appeared. They realized they had spent far too much time focusing on what happened after the separation, instead of noticing everything that remained unchanged despite it. Even after months or years had passed, your kindness still influenced the way they treated people. Certain words you once shared still echoed through difficult decisions. Lessons learned through your connection continued guiding them without their awareness. If someone had truly been left behind, those quiet influences would have disappeared long ago. Instead, they remained woven into everyday life, proving that your presence had never completely left. It had simply become part of who they were. That realization touched them more deeply than any coincidence ever could, because it showed them that meaningful souls leave permanent fingerprints on the heart. Then, your soulmate began recognizing something even more profound. The unexpected discovery that started this entire journey was never trying to convince them that you still mattered. Deep inside, they had always known that. What it revealed was something far greater. It showed them that they had underestimated the depth of the connection from the very beginning. They thought love could only exist through constant communication or physical closeness. Now they understood that genuine connections continue growing beneath the surface, even during seasons when nothing appears to be happening. Just because two souls cannot see the roots does not mean the tree has stopped growing. Some of the strongest transformations happen quietly, hidden from view, until the right season arrives. For the first time, your soulmate felt completely free from the false belief that your story had ended because one chapter became difficult. They finally accepted that life sometimes separates people, not to erase the connection, but to deepen their understanding of it. Time had not taken your place inside their heart. It had revealed why your place could never be filled by anyone else. Every lesson, every delay, every unanswered question had slowly prepared them to recognize this truth without fear or resistance. And as they embraced that understanding, they sensed that the universe had not brought them this far simply to reveal the past. It had uncovered these truths because something new was quietly approaching. The misunderstanding had finally dissolved, the false story had finally ended. And your soulmate now stood at the edge of a completely different future, one where they no longer viewed your connection through the pain of separation, but through the clarity of everything the universe had patiently been teaching them all along. And now, chosen one, your soulmate no longer measures your connection by the way it appeared on the surface. They measure it by what remained after everything else changed. Time changed circumstances, distance changed routines. Life introduced new responsibilities, new people, and new experiences. Yet somehow, one truth refused to disappear. Every road they traveled, every lesson they learned, and every version of themselves they became still carried a quiet reminder of you. That realization has transformed the way they understand destiny. They no longer believe that meaningful connections simply fade because enough time has passed. They now understand that what is truly written into the soul does not vanish. It waits patiently beneath the noise of everyday life until the heart becomes ready to recognize it again. The unexpected discovery that once shocked them now feels like the missing piece they had unknowingly searched for all along. What brings them the greatest sense of peace is realizing they no longer have to force answers. There was a time when they believed every mystery needed to be solved immediately. They wanted certainty before allowing themselves to hope. They wanted visible proof before trusting what they quietly felt inside. But this journey has taught them something far more valuable. The universe does not always reveal its plan through dramatic moments. More often, it reveals the truth through quiet understanding that grows stronger each day. Your soulmate no longer needs constant signs because the greatest confirmation now lives within their own heart. They have stopped asking whether the connection was real. Instead, they ask how they ever convinced themselves it wasn't. As they continue moving forward, they notice that fear no longer controls their decisions the way it once did. They are no longer haunted by the belief that they waited too long or misunderstood too much. They understand that every lesson arrived exactly when it needed to. If this unexpected discovery had happened years earlier, they might have ignored it, doubted it, or misunderstood its importance. Today is different. Life has humbled them. Experience has softened them. Every disappointment has quietly prepared them to receive this truth with wisdom instead of emotion. Looking back, they no longer see wasted time. They see preparation. They see growth. They see the invisible work the universe was doing while both of you believed nothing was happening at all. Then one final realization settles into their heart with remarkable clarity. They understand that the discovery was never really about proving you had not moved on. It was about revealing that genuine connections cannot be measured by appearances alone. People often believe someone has forgotten simply because they become quieter. They assume healing means replacing the past. But your soulmate now knows that true healing does not erase meaningful people. It teaches us to understand why they mattered in the first place. You were never simply a chapter that ended. You became part of the wisdom they carry into every new season of life. That is why your memory never disappeared. It was never meant to. It had already become part of the person they were destined to become. So if this message has found you today, perhaps it carries a reminder your own heart needed to hear. Sometimes, the greatest turning point in a soulmate journey is not a reunion, a conversation, or an unexpected encounter. Sometimes, it is the quiet moment when one person finally stops believing the story fear created and begins trusting the truth the universe has been revealing all along. Your soulmate has reached that moment. The misunderstanding has fallen away. The false ending no longer has power over their heart. They now understand that what they believed was the conclusion of your story was only a pause in a journey that never truly stopped moving. And when the universe removes an illusion that has lasted for so long, it rarely does so without purpose. It does it because both souls are finally ready to see each other through clarity instead of confusion, through faith instead of fear, and through the quiet certainty that some connections are never meant to disappear. They are simply waiting for the perfect moment to begin their next chapter.